Hey everyone, I'm Tarun and today we are going to get started with loops in Java. Loops allow us to repeat some kind of behavior in our programming logic and are thus considered to be one of the most fundamental and core concepts of every programming language. And Java, being such an amazing programming language, allows us so many ways to be able to work and play around with loops. So in this section, we will be looking at for loops, while loops, do while loops, and two amazing programming statements that are the break statement and the continue statement that allow us to be able to control the flow of these loops. So without further ado, let us get started. Hey everyone, Tarun here, and today we are going to be talking about the for loops in Java. So for loops are used to execute a piece of code multiple times. A for loop is preferable when the exact number of iterations is known beforehand. And the syntax for a for loop is as follows. We write the for keyword followed by parentheses, and inside these parentheses we write three separate statements. So the first statement is the initialization part, which allows us to initialize our iterating variable. The second part is the condition expression, which we evaluate after the completion of each iteration, and we see whether or not to terminate our loop. The third part is the update part. It is also called the increment or the decrement part, which allows us to update the value of our iterating variable. Then followed by these parentheses, we see curly braces, and inside these curly braces, we have the body of the loop. The body of the loop is the part where we write the statements that we want to repeat. So let us try to understand this with an example. So let us say that I'm given the task of printing all numbers starting from 1 and going up till 10. So basically I expect an output something like this, maybe without the commas, let's say. So I'm given a task to print numbers from 1 till 10. So how can I go about that? So let us try to break it down into smaller pieces. So the first thing is that I am repeating some kind of behavior. I am repeating the act of printing integer numbers, right? So since repetition is concerned, we can say, okay, I might need to use loops over here. So let us write a bare body of the for loop over here. And let us try to see how we can exactly fit the initialization, condition, update, and the body of the loop part. Let us try to break this down into smaller steps. So let's see. So we have a range over here. We have a range that starts from 1 and it goes up till 10. And obviously these are all integer numbers. So I can say that I might need an integer variable to store these numbers. So I'm going to pick a variable. I'm going to call it int I. The variable can be named anything. There's no such rule that we always have to pick I or J or anything like that, but it's just a standard practice to pick I and J for loop variables. So we pick a variable I, and now my demand or my thinking is that I want the variable I to be able to store these values one by one. So I want I to hold the value 1 initially, and then I want it to move slowly and gradually upwards, and then it should store the value 2, then 3, and then 4, and so on. And I want it to go up till I is equal to 10. So let us try to break this down further. So we want to start with the initialization part. So the first question that we have to ask ourselves is, what should be the initial value of our iterating variable, in this case I. So since we want it to start iterating from one, we can say I is equal to 1 should be our initialization. So we can say I is equal to 1. So that is our initialization. Now the next thing, we have determined our starting point. Now how do we want I to behave? We want the value of I to increase gradually upwards by an increment of 1. So I want the value of I to increase by an increment of 1. So I can write it as I is equal to I plus 1, or I can write it as I plus equal to 1, or even more simply I can write it as I plus plus or plus plus I. So let me do that, and I'll write it as I plus plus. Why I plus plus? Because I want the value of I to go from 1 up till 10. Now the next part, the condition. The condition allows us to control the behavior of our iterating variable as to up till which value should it go. So we want the value of I to increase upwards up until it reaches 10. So the loop should go on as long as the value of I is less than equal to 10. We want it to have all values from 1 up till 10. So I must be less than equal to 10. So we update our condition to I less than equal to 10. Now the final part. Should we put inside the body of the loop? What is the behavior that we are looking to repeat? The behavior that we're looking to repeat in this case is just printing of the I variable. So we can say that I want to print the I variable, and I can do that by system.out.println I. So that is what we are going to put inside the body of our loop. So that's it for the for loops. Hope you understood it. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And in the next video, we are going to see an example how we can pick up problems with the for loops. So see you in the next tutorial. Thank you. for watching. So before going any further, we should do a quick dry run of the for loop that we have over here. So what happens when this for loop is executed is, first of all, the initialization part is executed. So initially we have I is equal to 1. Then the body inside the loop is executed. So in this case, what we do is we simply print the value of I to the console. So let's say that my console is over here. So I'll just write 1 because that is the value of I initially. Next, once this iteration is complete, the increment or the update part is executed. With this, the value of I is incremented. So this was the first iteration. Now in the second iteration, the value of I has been updated to I is equal to 2. Once the update part has been executed, we then check the condition, the termination condition. So the termination condition is that I must be less than equal to 10 or otherwise terminate the loop. So currently I is less than equal to 10 since 2 is less than equal to 10. So it returns a true, and since the condition is a true, that means our loop will continue. So we see that the loop continues and we print the next value of I to the console, that is 2. Again, the same thing happens. The increment part is executed yet once again, and in the third iteration, we will have I is equal to 3. Again, the termination condition is checked. So in this case, it will be checked whether 3 is less than equal to 10. Again, it returns a true and the print statement is executed and 3 is printed to the console. Next, in the fourth iteration, I will have been incremented to 4 by the I++, and we again check whether it is less than equal to 10. So 4 is also less than equal to 10 and 4 will also be printed to the console. This will continue on and on and on up until the 10th iteration, when I will become equal to 10. So by then we will have something output like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. So this will be the iteration when we would have checked whether 10 is less than equal to 10, it would have returned true, and while executing this, we would have printed 10 to the console. Now in the next iteration, what would have happened is, in the 11th iteration, the value of I would have been incremented to 11. When it would have been 11, again we would have checked the condition whether I is less than equal to 10. Now this is the first time and the last time that this condition would get a false. And as soon as it gets a false, the loop is broken and we move on to the next statement. Since there is no other statement left in the main function, the program is terminated, and this is the output that we would have got in our console. So that is how a for loop works. Hope you understood it, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching. Hey everyone, Tarun here, and today we are going to be discussing a problem problem that is the largest of n numbers, and we are going to use for loop to solve it. So let us dive into it. So the problem says that we are given an integer n, that is the size of the input, and then we are given n more integers, and we are required to tell whether what is the largest of these n numbers. So for example, we are given n over here as 5, and then we are given 5 more integers, and we are required to tell which is the largest of these numbers. So clearly the largest number out of these 5 is 12, and that is the final output. So this is the problem. So how can we solve it? So a lot of people, when they look at this problem, think that they might need an array to solve this problem, when the fact is that an array is not at all needed. A simple for loop will suffice. So let us try to understand how we can solve it. So first of all, let us start with a bare bones boilerplate code. We are going to read the input n, So in this case, n was 5. N is going to tell us how many integers we have to read and compare. So let us start with simple n. Now the next thing is that we are required to read n more inputs, and then we will be doing some kind of comparisons to find our final answer. Since this repetitive behavior is needed, we will be using a loop. And inside the loop, we will be reading an integer. So for this particular test case, we will be running 5 iterations, and in those 5 iterations, we will be reading one integer at a time. So for this particular test case, we will be running 5 iterations, and in those 5 iterations, we will be reading one integer at a time, and we are going to store it in the current variable. Now next up, how can we find the answer, the largest number out of these n integers? So let's say that let's say we create an answer variable, and since we are looking to find the maximum possible value, we must initialize this answer variable with the lowest possible value, so that when we compare the max, it is get updated as soon as we encounter a higher value. So we will be initializing it to as small of a value as possible. So let's say minus infinity. Now what we are going to do is in each iteration, we are going to read the number, the current number, and we are going to compare it with our answer value. If the number is larger than the answer value, we will update it, or otherwise we will move forward. So basically the idea is that in each iteration, that inside our for loop, we will take this answer variable and we will try to calculate maximum of the current number and the answer that we have so far. So something like this.